for another episode of the Delusion Rehab Podcast. My name is Lauren, and if this is the first delusion you're jumping into, know that this is a pod fully dedicated to helping you come to your own reality check quicker than I did about delusions that have stolen away joy from my life because I simply chose to believe these lies for far too long. So, to start off, guys, I wanted to share that yes, I did have laryngitis, and yes, that is why this podcast is a week late. I trust that you will forgive me for that. I am realizing that it is actually a very live, in the moment training of perfectionism for me because I'm like, wow, how could I call myself a podcaster? And I'm like third week in and I'm already failing, quote unquote, failing on the timeline. And I knew that was a test, and I think I passed it because I came back with such fire for what this topic is today. Before I jump into that, wanted to let you guys know I did say today was going to be a monthly drawing, April 1st, for an Amazon gift card for people that put comments in the Spotify and Apple Pod episodes. And what I'm hearing is that I'm a little bit technologically not so savvy with what the comment section lets you do or not do, depending on your profile access. So we're going to make this simpler. If you go to Facebook or Instagram and follow Delusion Rehab Podcast and send me a comment telling me what you most loved about this week's episode or any of the past episodes, that'll be an entry. So every month, supposedly there will be 4 episodes, so you guys can put in your comments into all those pages and have up to 4 entries a month into our Amazon gift card giveaway. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to the topic at hand, shall we? The most requested topic on this brand new pod. So I'm not going to make you guys hold out on it any longer, and it's going to be a 2-part podcast. Imposter syndrome, the most commonly used expression in the world of success. So we're going to start with the definition of imposter syndrome because that word is so thrown around. And I am also pretty liable of saying those things constantly without having a lot of context. So if you Google this, you'll find plenty of definitions. It all comes down to this: it's a psychological phenomenon where you feel like a fraud. You are in disbelief of your own legitimacy and your own success. And the worst part is that you fear that you'll be exposed of not having earned the title that you're sitting in, or that you have actually earned the right to sit in the room that you've been invited to sit in. So, as I always say, take a moment. If that feels too heavy to talk about right now, save this pod for later. It's a 2-parter. Maybe you save it for next week when all of those parts are together. The delusion comes down to that your level of confidence in what you do is dictating your right to be there. Because the definition of an imposter syndrome itself explains in its definition that you do have legitimacy in your success. You do have the technical right. A couple weeks ago, we talked about credentials. You may have that on paper, and yet inside yourself, you don't think that that really matches, and you're worried that somebody is going to find out about you. Everyone and anyone can feel like an imposter when the confidence doesn't match. It doesn't matter what type of job it is: blue collar, white collar, day job, graveyard shift. It could be a desk job, it could be working with your hands. It doesn't seem to matter. I see imposter syndrome in a lot of people in my life, and they have all different types of scenarios. And yes, I'm speaking mostly to professionalism, but imposter syndrome definitely exists in the social world. And I'll be talking about that a little bit too. The word imposter, it just sounds so purposefully deceitful. like I think I stray away from using that phrase sometimes because I'm like, that's a little too harsh. That's a little too much. Come on, imposter. It's like, I know that somebody vetted me to make sure that they looked at my resume and they looked at my profile and they checked my LinkedIn and saw that I was legit. Why am I being so hard on myself about this? But it's the fact that we trick ourselves into believing that we somehow got to that point unworthily, tricking people into believing that we could do something and then them later finding out we aren't cut out for it. So I have some personal examples of this that are a little jarring, You know how everyone has like those 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm going to remember all the awkward and cringy things I ever did in my life? There's a couple that happened in the last 5 to 10 years that I cannot help but cringe over. The very first one was my audit internship. It was with the government. I was a junior into senior of college. It was, I would say, pretty prestigious for an internship, but guys, it sucked. It just simply sucked. Part of the reason was because uh, I was treated like an intern. I'm not saying that people asked me to go get coffee, but when I tell you that the things they asked me to do were the most menial tasks, and yet they still were worried that I couldn't do it. It was a lot of copying and pasting emails to big CEOs. So I get it. I was like a 21-year-old, 22-year-old writing to doctors and CEOs and big time people. They had defense contracts. That's what the audit job was. But I couldn't even understand the toxicity of the environment. Instead, I took it on myself and thought, this is all because I don't belong here. Someone talked to somebody to get me in, maybe some teacher at King's or someone at the career center had a conversation behind the scenes. It was like, let her do this. Like, I don't know. Do you come up with stories like that too? Of like, somebody must have done something in pity of me. It's just the truth. My mind goes there sometimes and we create stories. I even thought that the things that I did that were normal, like putting my lunchbox in a refrigerator, was pissing people off. I'll just say it. I got an email that I don't know, admin sent from the department saying, we would prefer that you put your lunch in a plastic bag instead of a full lunchbox because it's preventing people from putting critical medicine in the refrigerator. Like, okay, as a 21-year-old, that didn't strike me as toxic work environment. Now I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? um, if that happened to me today, I'd walk in the office of who said that to me and I'm like, let's have a conversation. But as a 21-year-old, I thought this is all about me and this is because I don't belong here. Not to mention the second summer I did that internship, because I guess I like cruel punishment. I was in the middle of a breakup with a first boyfriend of 3 years. So challenging. Driving to this job took me an hour each way in Philly area. Totally did not want to be a part of this job for the rest of my life, but I knew this was a resume builder. That's what I just kept telling myself. I'm like, I know this is going to get me somewhere. Just put in the hours and do the thing. But you know what's so cool? I am still friends with someone who sat behind me at that job, who I consider one of my most beloved work moms ever. I'm actually going to a conference with her this week that I'll talk about. She saw the potential in me a long time ago, and she also did see at the same time how I was being treated, and she just straight up told me, "Why don't you find something that really fuels you instead of this grind?" That might have been where she was able to feel fit and valued. I did not feel that in that environment, and that wasn't even my full-time gig yet. So, that example is just to share. Imposter syndrome can happen because you start to think that it's a place that's for you. And it actually is leading you toward understanding what you might want more of. It's not that you really want to be there, it's that you feel like you're being gaslit the entire way. And it might be a good positive sign. It might not be all that a bad thing, but we'll talk more about that next week for sure. So, when I did find something that fueled me, I found Campbell Soup. And I was an auditor, and it felt too good to be true to come out of college and have that gig, man. That, to me, it was like cream of the crop. It was certainly like a decent paying job, but more than that, it was just the name, the title. People knew where I worked. People liked what I did. People liked hearing about all of the, new products that were coming out, and it felt fun, downright fun. And that is what started my imposter syndrome with that job, because the perks that came with it didn't align. The whole time that I was growing up, I thought work isn't going to be fun. I'm just going to have to find something that I half heartedly enjoy, and then I'm going to carry on from there. But I got to go to Australia when I was barely 23, just out of college. There were other people in my department that had a very good career that could have easily been considered the right person to go because of their, again, credentials and because of their work experience. I was chosen for that. And I barely even told anybody that I was going, because as excited as I was, and this is important in imposter syndrome. As exciting as it felt like people were going to look at me and be like, "Who are you to get that gig? Who are you to get that job? Who are you to have impressed somebody so much that you get to do things like that?" So it was the combination of me thinking work shouldn't be fun, so somehow I'm here and I shouldn't be. And people would look at me, and in their potential jealousy, let's be honest, it would come across that I was the one that was the imposter, right? That I'm living the life that I must have had to cheat and bribe to get to. And it's so funny that I knew in my heart the entire time none of that was the truth. And yet I still got upset, thinking I can't let it even be perceived in a minor way that I may have gotten this job in a shady way. Like, I only take a pause for myself here because at the time I so badly wanted to belong. And I think we've all had those phases in our lives. I think we come and go from them, they're in waves. I am experiencing one in a way right now as being a new mom and trying to find new friend groups and trying to understand what it's like to have friendships in this era, this mom era I'm living in now. And I don't want to be perceived as an imposter just because I'm trying things out, just because I'm starting out. So much of what we do seems like imposter syndrome because it's so fresh. How could we possibly have had any experience with this unless we've started? And I'll tell you right now, that is what this podcast did for me for 2 to 3 years. I thought, who am I to do this? It just didn't fit in my head. I couldn't understand how someone with my experience and non level of, like, I don't know, I don't think I have the best radio host voice, but not thinking I had those qualifications put me in a place that I thought, even if I start messy and I look embarrassing and I look cringe, I don't think it's ever going to matter. And again, that's a point we're going to talk about next week. That imposter syndrome starts to believe that you can't make an impact anywhere you are. So we'll definitely get into that. There's some questions I want to ask you based on those examples of being somewhere that you just don't think you quite fit. Is it possible that you feel like an imposter when good things happen to you because you're waiting for the other shoe to drop? Does it make you nervous? Like, would you rather be considered suffering from imposter syndrome than actually enjoying what you're in? I'll quote Brene Brown again. She says one of the greatest disservices we do to ourselves is try to beat out tragedy by preparing for it early before it even might happen, because we're stealing joy preemptively from ourselves. And I think that when we live in imposter syndrome, we find ourselves in a place where we are so sure that this opportunity is not going to last that we already convince ourselves that we're not supposed to be here. And that is really hard to swallow if that's the case for you. It's been the case for me. I'll go back to another topic that I had just kind of thought was a little backwards in imposter syndrome, but it did have the same effect on me in terms of me wanting to make an impact and not understanding why others around me didn't see it. When I moved on from the not internship, Campbell's audit position, I had to pick another department. And at the time, based on where I wanted to live, I wanted to be at Pepperidge Farm, which was a subsidiary company. I wanted to pick a position that was kind of lateral. I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in the business, but it seemed like a cool job. I applied for it. My manager even requested that I be specifically chosen for this job based on the experience I had in the majors of college that would have been relevant and just in the audits that I had performed. And I was declined at first due to overqualification. Think about that a moment. Imposter syndrome doesn't usually come from a place of overqualification. It comes from a place that your mind is telling you you're underqualified. I was so hurt. And I laugh now because that probably to this day is one of the jobs that I feel was the hardest. Um, Not in technicality, but in just life situation. I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome in the middle of that job. I had several relationships in and out, constantly going to Pennsylvania for loneliness, living in an apartment that I was like not really affording well. And so there were lots of reasons why that job was just in a messy season for me. But that job, I find it so funny that I fought so hard for it because after the decline, I sent back a 5 bullet point email as to why I felt that I actually should be considered for it. I have never fought back when someone's told me, "We don't think this is right for you." In almost every other situation in my life, including now, if someone says, "We don't think this is right for you," I don't fight back because I really think that you need to know your worth and take it for what take their word for it. If they don't think you're right for them, it's probably not a you problem, it's a probably them problem. But I still fought for it because I wanted to live where I wanted to live. I wanted the job. It sounded like a cool situation, and I wasn't gonna get no from an overqualification standpoint. And I don't know what kind of conversation happened behind the scenes with my manager and that hiring manager. But the next thing I know, I have the job. I bring that up now because I think the reason I wanted that job was because I felt so misaligned with anything that was better than that department. I may have been qualified on paper. I did not feel qualified in my confidence. And that's part of the delusion, right? That I think that my confidence dictates my ability to be in a position or be in the room. And I think I fought for that job because I said, please let me be comfortable. Please let me be somewhere that I can live near the boyfriend I want to live near. Can I please live near, a place that's so far away from all of the friends that were like dropping me like flies? Like I was very frustrated and I was begging someone to let me be in a position that I was above. And it's just so, it gives me chills because I think like, wow, I've come so far from that. But it's not that imposter syndrome doesn't exist just for those that sit in scary roles. Sometimes it is, I feel like I don't belong here, but I want to be here because something about it is easy or safe. What about the fact that you might be intentionally choosing this option because the last thing you'd want to do is feel imposter syndrome? It's too scary to think that I might piss people off. It's too scary to think that someone might look at me and find out you do not belong here. You are so below us, and we know people like that even if they maybe don't act like it all the time. There's something about them that you're like, "What is your deal? Why do you feel like you constantly need to be better than everyone else around you?" And is it possible that imposter syndrome is coming from someone particular in your life? Is someone in your life giving you a reason to think that you're an imposter? Because that's a true sign that there might be a relationship change required before you even look at the job you have. And I hope that that spoke to somebody that needed to hear it right now, that your relationships are very powerful and influential in how you feel you might be able to move into the next phase of your professional life, social life, any type of accolade or success point that you strive for, that you have on your bucket list. That's something that makes you crave waking up in the morning. Don't let someone else tell you that you're not qualified for that, because guess what? If God wants you in that position, he qualifies you. I love this quote. It's not that God calls the qualified, he qualifies the called. He makes sure that those he's called to those roles have what they need to be there. So, why is this topic so important to me now? Because I could have waited weeks to go into this topic, and I did have it actually drafted to do later in the year. It's because there's things going on in my life right now that are so important to me that have me feeling a little bit like an imposter. So I have some big, exciting things coming in my path, and I have felt myself holding back from sharing them and being upfront and honest about them because it looks like success to a lot of people. It looks like success to me. It is a mixture of being given opportunities to represent the influencer community at the Wicked Gluten Free Expo in Mohegan Sun that I just went to with David. It includes stepping into the role of ambassadorship in two amazing mental and physical health companies that have some of the best mentors in the game and have some of the most groundbreaking products and personal development tools that I have known since starting this journey of self improvement about 6 or 7 years ago. And I am headed to a conference for one of those companies, GrowthDay. Headed to Austin this week, personal development and mentorship in a very intentional, oh my gosh, like crash course kind of way. I think it's 3 days, 8 hours each day of just full blown growth content. And I'm bringing it to my own private mentorship group, the Mood and Mind Society, and really pouring into them. I don't think that these are companies and people that I would have ever believed I'd have the opportunity to be a part of, even though they're positions where I'm in a place of service, right? So you would think, oh, if I'm a servant, if I'm a volunteer, if I'm coming at it in a way that I want to be someone else's light, not just putting myself on a pedestal, but giving someone else hope, I would think that that would seem like a job or a role that I wouldn't feel imposter syndrome of. I would feel like it was very humbling, that it was very worthy of my time. But I look at my follower account and I look at my age and I know that considered a millennial and I have Tourette's syndrome and ADHD as of recent diagnosis. And I say those are all reasons of which I cannot really truly believe in myself when it comes to these things that I've gotten to be a part of. But I'm kind of finding out that it's about excuses, fancy excuses. I just heard that phrase on the Growth Day app. The Daily Fire plays every morning. And today it was all about excuses and the fact that we can make the fancy excuses of saying why on paper this doesn't fit for us. So I could say, well, I only got to be a part of that influencer group for the Gluten Free Expo because, the follower count, you only had to have 800 followers. That's not even that hard. You know, the application was probably approved, no problem. Giving myself kind of a pass is to say I didn't really deserve it, right? It wasn't that big of a job or that big of a role. I could say, everyone needs a side hustle to keep up with this economy. So, this is just my thing, right? And I can continue to call it my thing, or I can decide to call it the ambassadorship that I wholeheartedly embrace. Two totally different ways of looking at that experience. But I have frequently told people this is my side hustle, this is my side gig, health and wellness, mental health. Um, Sure, but that's not where my true heart of it comes. There is income for my family involved. There is not it's not all about that. Let's put it that way. But interestingly enough, the reasons for why I really do those things seem like the imposter syndrome-ish part of the equation. Here's why I really want to be a part of those ambassador roles and those influencer roles and those positions that put me outside of corporate America. First of all, I know that making something of impact outside of what a college degree was required to have, I want Bella and any other future children we have to see that that is 110% okay with me. Making impact in this life, I am finding quickly, as much as a college degree is very beneficial, and I'm very grateful for it. If I had had a life path that would have had me get different education or a different set of skills and gone into other roles and other industries, I probably would have been making a lot more bank than a financial accounting fill in the blank. And that wasn't how it was advertised in school, but I love the fact that I get to do this part time outside of my, we'll just call it daily grind, the thing that keeps us eating. But I will love this for life. I know that I will probably have several jobs in my life. This one feels like a lifelong one for me. And I don't want to just fall into the trap of thinking, I don't belong here. Because then there's probably people out there that need impact from what comes from me, and I'd be too scared to share it. I This is gonna get a little bit, I don't wanna say savage, I'll say a little raw, a little honest. I don't like when people say in a flippant comment that you just can't be healthy in this day and age. Too much temptation. Life's too hard. It's too hard to have a positive mindset and healthy routines. Time's so limited. Our world is just making us grind. Our world is just making everything so much harder. I decided to do the exact opposite of that narrative. And I am purposely putting myself in ambassadorship roles for mental health and physical health because I think that society has lied to us and told us that we can't do it ourselves, that we need everything under the sun. And I'm very tempted to say certain things and I won't, but all these different shortcuts. And I chose to be in a position where it is hard to create routines to be healthy and have positive mindset, and yet it is not impossible. And I did not want to carry on the narrative that others have around me that it's simply impossible to have a healthy life. So putting myself in those positions, whereas you might not look at me and think, oh, that totally fits her brand, or that 10 years ago you wouldn't have thought it fit my brand. I could barely run a mile, hated kale. None of that made any sense to me. But I chose this because of how well it aligns with my values. I know that there are people almost weekly that reach out to me because certain stories of mine and experiences and choices I've made in my life have given them hope outside of what they thought they could have. And I am so thankful that God gave me the grace to share it. It's been on my mind a lot this past week. There are things that I have said no to. I had to actually say no to multiple times because I was like, "Are you sure, God?" And God's like, "Yeah, I'm sure, girl." I'm like, "Move on." And, you know, I got in those ruts because I couldn't see past the imposter syndrome. I couldn't see past my regrets and my doubts. I could only see what I had done and not what God would give me the grace to do. But I am so thankful that by being in these roles of ambassadorship that I can live out hope in front of people that need hope themselves and show that struggle is not all of the story and it never has to be. But you know why I don't say any of those things very often? Because every time I think them, I think, who am I to say any of that? Who am I to say that I should be able to have a job on the side of my professional 9 to 5 that lets me provide impact to others? Do I have a degree for it? Do I have a certification? Do I have whatever XYZ, whatever the heck special signed document saying that this should be my identity? I say that word because it's so commonly used today, but it's true. Like, we attach our lifestyle to what we think our identity is. And I would rather say it should be the other way around. Whatever we consider our identity, that's what we should be layering our lifestyle with, not taking a lifestyle and trying to turn it into who we are. So you can tell I'm rooted in some of the delusion too. That's why I didn't know if I wanted to come out with this topic right away, because I thought, well, who am I? I was in the middle of imposter syndrome, in the middle of trying to put this podcast together. It's hilarious how this has gotten to be a spiral issue for me, and perhaps it's spiraled in your life too. I just came home from the gluten-free expo, and it's already been proven to me that no matter what comes out of that experience, I have met so many small businesses and families that I feel privileged to have met. And I know that I was meant to meet those lives that day. And sometimes we get put in positions that it's not because of our character and our qualities. It's about the fact that we're supposed to be there for a reason, there for a season, there for a reason. And I know I was supposed to meet those people that day. And I was given a seat at that table at the minimum for that. So imposter syndrome doesn't get a say there. I am also, like I said, headed to Austin for the GrowthDay conference to see some of the most influential speakers and motivators of this lifetime face to face after listening to their short form podcasts and masterclasses for like the last 2 years. And now I'm paired with one of the top teams in that company. Something again that I say, okay, imposter syndrome's telling me I don't belong here. Don't deserve the accolade for it. Don't deserve the highest quality mentor in the game. And so, part 2 of this pod is going to be all about coming off of that conference with fresh content for my brain to say, how can I fight imposter syndrome? How can I show others that imposter syndrome is able to be combated and that we can break it down so that we can rise to the occasion of being put in a spot that we were born to be a part of, aligned to be a part of, and somewhere impact matters. So, stay tuned for that pod because it's going to be fire. But in the meantime, I will leave you with some songs, as I do, that help me in the darkest moments of imposter syndrome cycles. So, one is a song that most recently was shared to me by my husband. It's by Bethel Worship, called Made for More. And it's all about choosing to walk away from wallowing in pain and shame and stepping into the life that we now are given by the grace of God, to take our life and turn it around, to not live in that shame. And that in itself, it doesn't make you an imposter because you're taking your life and changing it. I have to constantly tell myself, just because my 10 years ago self looked like that doesn't mean my current 33-year-old self is going to look like that. Also doesn't mean that myself is going to look like that when I'm 43, 53, 63, and so on. So I have to remember, imposter roles do not come from changing yourself for the better. The second song that I have in the pod is going to be Roar by Katy Perry. Completely, completely different tone. But talk about a song that when you listen to it, it reminds you of the voice that you have and that it counts. The strength that you have after rising from ashes of failure and claiming that you have the heart of the fighter and it lives in you even when you feel like the imposter. But the song reminds me that I'll live to tell the tale. I will live to say, I have done all of these things. It's only prepared me for what I'm in and what's to come, girl. I scream sing that song in my house, in my car, more than I'd like to admit, but it is everything that my heart feels when I need to break through the BS that I tell myself, and that I shouldn't be so entitled to have all these experiences. Girlfriend, God put you there. We can't be an imposter and be blessed in that position at the same time. I truly believe that. The more I think about it, the reason why people, including myself, don't often believe this is because we look at people that are in those positions and think to ourselves, they have it all going on. How many of those people are faking it till they made it? High percentage. Those that experience imposter syndrome are not the imposters. Like, mic drop. That should be where the pod ends. But we have much more to come next week. So when I return, we'll pick a winner of the Amazon drawing, as well as share the amazing stories that came out of the Austin conference, in which we will learn together how to work out this delusion that our confidence level should dictate where we get to share our gifts. See you next time.